Number 9, live from the homestead, number 9. Excuse the hair, you're used to it by now, I'm sure. Look at that quiff, how awesome. Hope you're all doing really well. We're doing really well. And yeah, it'd be nice to catch up with some of you guys today. So again, I had to move the live stream today from Sunday, tomorrow to today, because I've got a foraging course that I'm leading. And let me just take care of that. So I've got my wife's iPad here, and I have that for the messages. And every time, it doesn't matter that I've got it on silent, it comes up with the volume as we start. You'll see behind me there my wife's lilies from the garden, which look and smell beautiful. And so yeah, here we are. Anyway, so this week I've had an awful week at work, and it's just been one of those weeks where everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. It was horrible work. The actual work I was doing was just not the sort of work you want. It was all really, really bitty, really physically and mentally demanding, and just a really, really hard week at work. But we've got through it, and next week is much, much better. So yeah, there we go. And on top of everything else, I won't lie, I've really, really struggled this last week. I'm really lucky. I'm really fortunate in that the job I have is something that I genuinely enjoy. And, I always have. I've always enjoyed building, and even the physically hard side of it, I've always enjoyed. But every so often, just like anyone in any job, you get little bits of the job, little parts, little hours or days or weeks when it's just not fun and nothing that you're doing is enjoyable. And it was one of those weeks this week. So, but we've got through it, got to the end of it. And ironically, I've got my, so this is all, it's going to sound a bit superfluous, but it's not. It's all attached to the same theme. I've got crayfish nets out, crayfish traps out in the river. So every evening I've been, hi Shannon, glad you could make it, mate. So every evening I've been going out to check crayfish traps, and on top of all the other jobs, milking the goats, processing the milk, feeding the pigs, it means that by the time I get settled down and get in the house, it's been a little bit later than usual because of the extra time going out to check the traps. Hi Hannah, glad you could make it. And so this is all leading up to me saying that yesterday I'd kind of been building up to yesterday being the end of the week, and I could just kind of chill and relax and catch up because I was feeling pretty physically exhausted. Like I say, the week's work had really taken it out of me. So anyway, so I come home yesterday, and I had a nightmare basically getting home. I didn't get home till after 6. So I was milking the goats late, and then I've just finished milking the goats, and I turn around and what do I see come running out of the undergrowth, but piglets in the meadow, just running straight towards me to say hello. And so the moral of this story, or the purpose of this story, is to say that, so after we'd done all that, then we had to spend the next half an hour or so getting the pigs back in the wood because they'd escaped. The fence is really, really giving up. It is on its last legs. Now, you've seen in the winter, we went round and kind of made a few patch repairs. My plan was, if we were keeping pigs, what I would have done by now is I would have set up some electric fencing all around the inside of that wood. And that was my plan. But obviously with the pigs going, it just doesn't warrant it. It doesn't warrant the effort. It's going to be quite an effort to clear the area that I'd need to... Hi, Julie. So glad you could make it. And hi, Jane. So glad you could make it for the first time. It's quite a bit of effort to clear that space around. You need to clear like a couple of foot inside the fence, right around that wood. And it's 1.25 acres of woodland. And then set up the electric fencing. Now, that's not a big job if it's for a long-term plan. It's actually quite a small job. It might take a day or two. But to do it for having the pigs here for just a few more days or a couple of weeks just doesn't make any sense at all. So we've been kind of bodging and just making repairs as and when. Hi, Jeff and Deb. And hi, Mongol Raider. I'll get to your question in a second. So yeah, we've just been making running repairs basically. So there we go. It's 6:30 at night, and but in my head all day I've been expecting to be in the house, maybe having a drink or something, but certainly done for my day. And I wanted to get in the bath super early and just lie in there for 2 hours because I was just so knackered from the week. And I was really looking forward to that. But there I am, 6:30, still haven't gone and checked my crayfish traps. We're making temporary repairs to the fencing. Everywhere's shut, so I can't even go out and buy fencing materials. And it was just a nightmare. And I didn't get in the house till about 7:30, having not eaten or done anything else. And it was just, it was one of those nights. And I made a video last night, but I'm in two minds about whether to release it. Let me know. You guys let me know. And I'm being honest about that. Don't say, yes, release it for the sake of it, because it might be a bit of a downer, because I was in the joy of homesteading, indeed, Shannon. I was just a bit annoyed with everything, and I wasn't feeling particularly happy like my usual jolly self. I wasn't like depressed, but it was just everything was going wrong, and that was clearly coming across in the video. So I'm not sure whether to edit and release that or not. Let me know if you want to see it, and I will. Mongol Rider writes, what's the weather like there at the moment? So right now it's dry. 20 minutes ago we had some heavy rain. We've got sort of heavy showers scheduled on and off for the next couple of weeks. We've had some really wet weather in the last week, and it's such an odd year weather-wise. We had a really late spring. So we had really, really cold weather, much colder than usual for much longer than usual. So spring didn't start until really, really late. And then almost immediately after spring started, just a few weeks later, we had massive heat and warmth and sun for a good couple of weeks. Like, I'm not sure if it was record setting, but if it wasn't, it was pretty close. And then after that, we've had this ridiculously wet June, July, the second half of July. So it's just been really unpredictable this year. And funnily though, it doesn't seem to be having a negative effect on the on the vegetable garden. It's our fruit and veg are just doing really, really well this year. So what's everyone else's experience of their harvest this year? We are certainly harvesting more at this point than we were last year, even though last year we had on paper probably better weather. We had an earlier spring for sure. And last year I was caught short with a late deep frost, just a one-off late deep frost, which set me back. So that could be just my experience that this year's better than last year's. But how are you guys finding it? So a couple of you have asked me to release the video, so I absolutely will. And when I get round to editing it, I will. Jeff and Deb out in Australia, southern Australia, I think. Weather has been nuts here too this year. Coolish summer, very cold and wet winter so far, and very windy. Hannah says, I'm so fed up of courgettes. Pretty much sums up our harvest so far. Julie from Elegance Efficiency says, pretty good harvest so far. But tomatoes are a little bit slow off the mark. And Shannon, also in Australia, definitely South Australia there. We have been the same as Jeff and Deb. Really wet and cold and windy here too. So just outside of Melbourne in Victoria is Jeff and Deb Shipton. So odd weather all round, and that does seem to be the theme, and we should probably get used to it, and we should start thinking about how we're going to manage our plans based on that. It's something I've been giving a bit of thought to, and I think I'm going to make a podcast. Elegance Efficiency looks like cucumber omelette today. And apparently I said Melbourne wrong. But yeah, I'm going to do a podcast talking about how we might think about planning our annual vegetables and things that aren't perennials around this idea that the weather's going to be more changeable, and whatever we're used to and whatever is usual and the norm will be rarer and rarer, and we're going to be having to deal with weather in extremis much more often, whether that's, warmer than usual, colder than usual, wetter than usual, drier than usual. We're seeing that everywhere, all around the globe, in America, all around Europe, and obviously in Australia as well. We've had that ridiculously difficult flooding in Germany, and we've got a really prolonged drought across a lot of Western America at the moment, and we're going to have to learn how to manage those things and how to plan around them. A lot of it is about building resilience into our soil and, resilience into our systems, and permaculture thinking and regenerative agriculture and things like that. Things I talk about all the time are definitely big parts of the puzzle, but I think we can also maybe lend our thinking towards that as well. And, maybe how we're planning what we actually plant, when we plant it, and how we plant things as well. So what have we got here? Jeff and Deb Shipton, sunny and quite mild today. And Julian, hello, I'm new, but this channel is really great. Well, thank you, Julian. How kind. It's pronounced Melbourne down here. Is that right? Melbourne. Okay, that's alien to me, but that's cool. We had one good day the other day, 20 degrees and nice, but just so wet. I need to mow my lawns, but when? That's Shannon. Okay, so I think I'm even going to pronounce Melbourne to my British friends when I speak to them, because that will that will throw them for sure. So going back to the fencing and the pigs, I've got on my roof rack right now, I've got 5 lengths of half round rails, 3.6 meter rails, and I'm going to go out and make some permanent temporary repairs to some of the worst bits of fencing, and I think that's going to be fine then. That will last us until next Saturday, because fingers crossed, next Saturday all of our pigs will be leaving the premises. We don't actually need to move them to their temporary housing anymore, because I think I've sold them all, including the sow, and they're all going to go on to new homes and be picked up next Saturday. That's the plan. And I have to say, I'm ready now. I'm looking forward to it. I'm not looking forward to the fact we're not going to be able to have pigs anymore, but because we can't keep pigs here anymore, I need it to be done, because at the moment, we've got pigs out there we're not getting any benefit from. There's no future benefit from us having them. All they are now is a liability. They're a liability we need to maintain, we need to feed. They're just a workload. They're something that requires an input, and there's no outputs for my family anymore. So I'm at the stage now where I want them gone, and to close the door on that bit of effort and work. Let me just adjust the camera ever so slightly. There we go, that's better. Jenny Nichols, hi Carl and everyone. Hi Jenny, so glad you could join us. And Shannon says, I think you'll notice a relief once it's done, just something to not worry about given the situation. Yeah, 100%, Shannon, I couldn't agree more. So we are now, I've got so much I can be doing all the time. I don't need to ever worry about filling my days, or even, I'm far from it, but if I was a full-time YouTuber, if I was a full-time content creator, if this was how I paid my bills and made my living, I still wouldn't need to worry about having enough things here to do, having enough content and stuff like that. There's plenty for us to do, even with the mindset of it being a temporary space. That I don't need to think, well, now the pigs have gone, that leaves a big hole. There is no hole. There's no vacuum to be filled. There's, if anything, a compression of other things waiting to get in there and take up that space, that time, There's loads of like foraging I'd love to go out and go and get some more mushrooms, which I haven't really had time to do yet this year. Loads more fishing and trapping. I'd love to learn how to trap some other things, and also just general, a bit of rabbit hunting and stuff like that. So it will be nice that space will be freed up. That sort of, when I say space, I mean that sort of time allocation, effort, energy that I'm currently expending on what is essentially, something that's never going to return to me now. It'll be nice to have that freed up to do some other things. Not least of which, we can start looking at things like transplanting some of our perennials and our trees, which reminds me, Adam from Gardener's Tale YouTube channel, he has so kindly offered, he's been a guest on the podcast a couple of times, and he gave me some of our raspberry plants, and he's so kindly offered, and we've got a date booked in the diary to come and help me. He's a professional gardener, and he really knows his stuff, and he's so kindly offered, he's going to give up a day of his time and come down here and help me transplant some of our fruit trees and our perennials, and transplant them into big pots that they're going to be quite happy in for a little while, to enable us to move them with us when we move house. So that's just, what a kind offer. And I think it was on the live feed, but it might have been on a different video. Kumro, who follows us and follows me and is quite often in the live feed, he's offered to come and help me get set up at the new place. Just the offers of kindness and the support, and the emails and stuff I'm getting have been overwhelming, and I'm so grateful to you guys. You're all awesome. Everyone's awesome. And I just got the best support. So thank you all for that. And I know I say it a lot, but I can't possibly say it enough. What I will say as well, while I'm on the topic, is please be patient. If you send me emails and stuff, I get quite a lot now, and I'm a little bit behind. I struggle to keep up, I'll be honest. I do always get to them, but sometimes they have to sit there for a few days before I have a chance to reply, because I'm one of those people, if I open an email and read it and don't reply straight away, and that little blue dot's gone to tell me that the email's unread, there's a really good chance I'll forget to go back to it. So I don't open an email until I've got time to properly digest it and reply to it. And the same goes for text messages, messenger messages, all of those kinds of things. So I'm a bit behind, but if you've sent me an email, not replied to you, I do apologize. Please be patient. I will get to you, I promise. And the same really overarching theme covers the Facebook group. So I do go on the Facebook group and I read every message on there, but sometimes I'm on there every day, and for long periods. Sometimes I don't go on there for days on end. That's just my nature. I'm not a big Facebook user. I personally don't have a Facebook account. The only Facebook account I have is the one that I use to manage this channel, and for this channel and for that group. And I haven't been on there for about a week because I just haven't had a chance, or whatever it is, but I will get to it, I promise. There is also a new Facebook group for patrons only, set up by Vicky, for which I'm really grateful. I haven't had chance to kind of properly finish setting it up with her, but in the next few days that will be available as well. It's really difficult I'm in a bit of a quandary when it comes to patrons. I really like the idea of giving them stuff, as much extra stuff as I can, but I also, so much of what I do is almost like a PSA, and I really want to spread the word of what I'm doing, and I'm running at full capacity to put out all the content I do across all the mediums that I do it in, and it's really not possible for me to make like extra content. So this is just one of the ways that patrons get that little bit extra. And if you're not a patron and you'd like to be one, to tip me for what I'm doing here and the time I spend editing and all that kind of stuff, then please do consider it. And you can do that by going to patreon.com/self-sufficient hub, and it really does mean the world to me. Another thing I'm going to be doing, and this is again Vicky's suggestion, is I'm going to be collating some of the podcast series that I've done, like my permaculture series. I'm going to be collating them into one audio download, which again will be available to patrons only. Now, this is a way of making it so patrons get a little bit more, but it doesn't actually take away from anyone else. You know, this is, sorry, there's a wasp in my kombucha. Hang on, I've got to deal with this. And that is the best way for me to deal with it just for now. Look at that little nasty little blighter. So yeah, that's something I'm going to be doing. So a few messages here. Where are we? Yes, Carl, it's hard to put the effort into what is essentially a lost cause, talking about the pigs. This is Jeff and Deb Shipton. You've got plenty to get on with without the pigs. Shannon says, especially when they escape. And hello, Guido Fawkes. So glad you're here. And Us Up North has just joined us. So glad you could make it as well. Lots of people just saying how fantastic it is for Adam to offer to help, and it is. And Jeff and Deb Shipton, patrons just contribute because they want to help, not expecting anything in return. Just do what you can when you can. Bless you. And Elegance Fishy Julie says exactly the same thing. Thank you. Well, thank you guys. You know, you guys are the ones I'm talking about. You guys are the patrons. So, you know, your feedback is taken on board and really appreciated. DSR IT Training UK, afternoon, Carl from Norfolk. Hi, Debs. So where are we next? I've got a little list of stuff that I wanted to get through here. And yeah, so for those of you, hi, Vicky. Just having lunch. So glad you can get here. So talking about the podcast. So obviously it's been a week and a half now since we kind of got the news that, you know, of what our future looks like. And it was a big shock, etc., etc. Well, I had actually, for the first time in a long time, just before we received that, I'd pre-recorded sort of 3 or 4 podcasts in advance. I normally don't have any in the can. I might record 2 or 3 in advance at the weekend to sort of get me through the week, but that's about it. But it just so happens I had like 2 weeks worth in the can. So that's why there's been no mention of my current situation on the podcast. But I'm going to do a really good catch-up, in-depth version of that and kind of like a giant housekeeping episode at some point this week. Shannon, bless you. I think you're priceless, Carl. So much more than $5 a month. Bless you. Yeah, so there's going to be lots of updates there in the podcast group, in the podcast feed. And my September challenge is now just around the corner. It's the last day of July today. So we've got officially 1 month until I start. And I have to say, I can't wait. One of the things that I've been doing it's been the focus of a video or two, is looking at procuring some fish. And it's not the same, but I'm talking about crayfish. But also there will be some mollusk foraging, some mussels and things. Not yet, that'll be in September. But I'm hoping to get another trip down to the beach in, at least 1, maybe 2, to get some mackerel in. But I've got some crayfish nets in the river and I'm just going there every night. So those crayfish are going to sit there, or the traps are going to sit there. And I've got like a rotation. I've got yesterday's crayfish are purging in clean water, the day before's are in the freezer, and today's crayfish are in the traps that I'll go and collect. So yeah, I'm really looking, Jeff and Deb said September is going to be so exciting to follow, really looking forward to it. I am as well. I really can't wait now. I'm really quite excited about it. There's still loads of things that, if I had infinite time, there's loads of things I really want to get done and I wanted to have done by now. Things like, you know, homemade pasta, and, you know, trying it. I've never even tried it. So there's so many things I'd love to have done, love to have tried. I'd love to have a field of wheat out there that I could harvest and make my own flour from, just to, you know, use that as part of the experience. But I haven't had time. I've done what I can and I will continue to do what I can. But critically, I think that's part of the process and that's part of the journey and what I'm trying to share. Because if it's taught me anything, what I'm really learning is that the pinch point won't be availability of variety of food. It won't be that there are things I can't make. It will be the time. It will be the time that it takes to do these things. Now, bear in mind, I've said, I've made no bones about it. I've been quite open that I've picked September because it's going to be the easiest month, I think. I've based it around things like that it's the month I'm most guaranteed to have potatoes. I'm going to have an abundance in the garden of both fruit and vegetables. And, I've picked, not through chance, through choice, the easiest month to do it in. Even with that in mind, I don't think if I was eating all the things that I'm kind of saving to, with September in mind, if I was eating all those things and going into September from the 1st of September with nothing in the freezer and then saying, right, from now, I'm only, I'm going to follow the rules of this challenge, I think I'd really struggle. I wouldn't struggle in terms of like starvation. I'd be fine, but I'd have a really, really constricted diet. There would be, it would be just vegetables, meat, potatoes. That would be it, every meal, because I wouldn't have the time to do all the other stuff, the cheese making and the, yogurt making and the kombucha making and the cream separating and making butter and all of these things. It's the time they take. And with, as you guys know, a full-time job, so once we take that out of the equation, once we take out the time that I sleep out of the equation, once we take the what I would call treading water activities out of the equation, the stuff that we do just to stop things falling apart, the general harvesting, sowing, weeding, feeding, milking. Once you take that out of the equation, and then once you take out the time that I spend filming, editing, and recording podcasts, you take that out of the equation, there's a little bit left. There is a little bit left, believe it or not, to do things like make cheese, to do things, all the other things that I share with you, to do things like go fishing, but it's only a little bit. Now, I do think genuinely that if I didn't have a full-time job and that freed up, those extra 36 or 40 hours or whatever it is a week, I think I could do it quite comfortably. I really do. Certainly in September. Could I do it and feed my whole family? Maybe in September, but could I do it and feed my whole family for a year? I don't think there's any chance at all. And it is the time, and something else I've not mentioned, the time to preserve things and save things for later, to make chutneys, to blanch and freeze things, to dehydrate things. These are all things that take time. And this is, and I'm only saying this to sort of, to share it really, because it's something that's become so apparent to me. And here in England, on the back of the £20 note, is a chap. He was a famous industrialist, and I can't remember his name now, but the little quote and the reason he's on there, and I can't believe I can't remember his name, but he's on there for basically the division of labor in pin making and the vast improvement in productivity that it provided. I think that's the quote. And the idea is, that phrase, division of labor, is really what it's about. And when we live in a modern society, the reason that we're able to talk to each other via the internet and to have things like mobile phones, to live in the houses that we live in the societies that we live in, with the infrastructure that we live in, the reason we're able to do that is because we specialize. I am a specialist when it comes to building houses or, several aspects of construction work. Now, the time that I spent into learning that is time that I didn't put into learning to, become a physician or whatever else it might be. And the idea is that because we as a community, as a society, we can all specialize in something, we become super efficient at it, and then we basically share the fruits of our labor through trade, through an economy. The idea being that the division of labor makes us more productive as a species, and it absolutely does. But what I'm doing, what I'm trying to do is something completely different. And the price you pay is in that productivity. Because I'm being a generalist, I'm trying to do a little bit of everything, which means I'm not doing almost anything the most efficient way. Someone who was just specializing in growing vegetables, they're going to have a more productive space than I've got, if that's all they were focused on and they were really good at it and they'd spent decades learning how to do it. They would have a more productive space. Of course they would. And if they didn't, then you'd have to ask why not. You know, they'd be doing something wrong. There's nothing, it's not a slight on me to say that. Someone who was doing everything they could to raise pork would, from the same amount of space, from the same amount of inputs, they could raise a lot more pork than I did. Of course they could, you know, and if they couldn't, then there's something wrong with what they're doing. And this goes right across the board for everything I do. So by generalizing rather than specializing, there's a price you pay in the time it takes to do all of these things. You know, I'm not doing any of them the most efficient way possible. That's not to say I'm not okay with that. I'm very okay with that. I'm quite happy with it. But it just, you know, it kind of explains the situation of how difficult it would be. Now, with that said, if my wife also didn't work, and you know that was our job, I think we could actually quite comfortably do that. But of course, that leaves us without an income to pay the bills and pay for some of the other things that we like. So there's a few comments here just to get caught up on. Shannon Ward says he's going to try something similar, but just for vegetables and maybe for not as long. It's so excited. It is, Shannon. It's fantastic. And it will really focus you on some new areas. You'll be surprised. All of a sudden, you'll be thinking, okay, so maybe I need to do this next year. And that's how you'll learn, is by, we can all grow a few vegetables in our garden, and that's fantastic. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. Do it. Everyone should do it. But by then saying, right, for 1 week, I'm going to be self-sufficient in vegetables. I'm not going to buy any salad. I'm not going to buy any vegetables. By the end of that week, you'll have learned so much more about what you want to do next year, and you'll have learned so much more about what's working and what isn't. That's the joy of it for me. And there's no doubt in my mind that when I sit down on October the 1st and look back on September, I will be able to, you know, really have a completely different perspective on what I'm doing here. Where are we? Pesky Chicken writes bingo, and that was about the you know, the amount of time that it takes. Jeff and Deb Shipton, it's certainly got us thinking about what can we do ourselves in the future. Fantastic. Shannon, who needs sleep. Jeff and Deb Shipton, isn't that what working towards self-sufficiency is all about? Planning and balancing what we can produce rather than merely surviving. Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. And I like the September challenge because, like I say, it will really force me to kind of focus on some things that perhaps I was negligent of or even unaware of. It'll really bring to my attention a lot of different aspects that I hadn't really thought about. Vicky writes, put the kids to work. And yeah, absolutely. If I thought I could get away with that. And Julie from Elegant Sufficiency, as much as I love the concept of self-sufficiency, this all highlights the value and importance of community to share the load. 100%. And I love that. And be sufficient and somewhat efficient. Right, Shannon, I love that as well. And yes, Julie, so this is something that's become more and more apparent to me over the last 3 or 4 months. As I've drawn my focus onto this September challenge, it's really brought something onto the field of play for me, which wasn't really there before. And it is this idea that to really get the most out of this thing that I'm trying to do, I think starting to build a more local community around some of the things is actually going to be a really big next step. And I think once we know what we're doing with regards to land and where we're going to be living and doing all this stuff, I think that's something I'm going to point my focus towards a little bit more. And the idea of, again, it ties in with that division of labor. You know, if you've got, and I mentioned this on the last live stream, I think, because, and it's, I only use this example because it's an example I know, and I don't know very many. It's Alan and Mike, who are the two hosts of the Urban Homesteading UK podcast, and they're very, very good friends, and they work together. And they're always talking about, oh, you know, my tomato seedlings all died or I had a problem with them, and then whoever the other chap is who isn't having the problem says, well, I've got some spare, you can have them. And this idea of community, it not only allows you to have a little bit of division of labor, and perhaps I'm going to say, I can raise all the pork. I can raise enough pork for all 4 of our families. So none of you guys need to worry about that. And I can maybe do all the goat's cheese. And then someone else can take care of all the honey or whatever it might be. And you can look at it as communal, you can look at it as bartering, you can look at it however you like, but the idea is it means that you're allowed to focus on doing a little bit more of something you're already doing. And by doing that little bit more, you're getting much more value, much more production than if you'd instead of spending 3 hours here and 3 hours here, if you spend 6 hours here, you're going to get more than the combined value. So Vicky Parnaby writes, allotments are a good place to form a community. Yeah, no doubt. I'm sure and I don't know where I'm going to start. So one of the things is my wife and I, we're both hermits. We're very, very comfortable in our own company and we don't like leaving the house. It's funny, in social situations, I'm really social and I'm certainly outgoing, but I don't seek out social situations very much. So maybe here's a great question for you. Great question for you guys, because I haven't got a clue. If I got an allotment, what could I do with it that would be productive, but would require the minimum numbers of visits to the allotment? So what can I put there that I would only need to visit, on the bare minimum of occasions, but that would be worth me having the allotment? What are your ideas? You've just described us to a T, Jeff and Deb Shipton. Yeah. And there are a lot of characters at allotments who you want to hide from, says Vicky. Perennials, yeah. So I suppose I could put, that's a great idea, actually. You could just have a low, but do perennial. I'm just trying to work out the economics of it, versus the cost of an allotment, and then if you've got the space at home, but yeah, maybe just some, gooseberry bushes and things like that could work. Gooseberry bushes are tough as nails, aren't they? Anyway, please let me know your ideas. Please do. This is something I'm giving lots of thought to, RE, big stuff, large crop space, but low effort. Yeah, one of the things I would think would be squash. And Hannah writes, definitely, Vicky, as we work full time, the other guys help us out with the time consuming jobs. But as we are the youngest by some years, we help them out with the heavy stuff. That's a really good arrangement, Hannah. I like that. Yeah, I like that. And I suppose that's where I could fit in with the construction side of things. I'm imagining there are people who want sheds fixed and re-roofed and what have you. Don't know. I will give it some thought though. I do like that idea. We're going back now. I'm going to drop that and go back about half an hour because I made a little note here of something that I wanted to talk about. And we've started talking about the weather, and we've had a storm with a name come through the UK. Nothing like most of the rest of the world get. When we have a storm with a name, it usually just means fairly high winds, gusts of, 50 miles an hour, something like that. But some of my corn has blown over in the night. I don't know if any of you suffered with that, and I'm not sure. I'm going to try and just stake it up with some bamboo canes, and I hope it'll recover. I'll have to have a look. Jenny Nichols, I have an allotment, but rarely see anyone, but would rather it be in my own garden. I find the plants get neglected from time to time. We have an allotment WhatsApp group, and this works well for swaps. Nice. And I imagine everyone's looking to swap their courgettes at this time of year. It's funny, our courgettes seem to be behind everyone else's. We are ahead of a lot of people with our beans and lots of our other things. Our tomatoes are doing really well. Our cucumbers are ridiculous. Look, let me show you. I am coming back, just 2 seconds. This is yesterday's cucumbers. So they're just ridiculous. But yeah, I seem to be behind everyone else on courgettes. We're getting a couple a day, but I think we're going to be getting a lot more. Oh, far too many plants, Vicky. Vicky writes how many plants, talking about the cucumbers. So at the start of the season, my wife's going to hate me saying this, but my wife and I disagreed about how many cucumber plants we needed. And my wife said we needed to give half the polytunnel to cucumbers and half to tomatoes. And that's what we did. And so it's probably about 7 plants, but I don't think we'll do that many next year. And here we go. So Jenny Nichols had to cane sweet corn too. And Julie says this is why I don't grow courgettes. Do we sell the surplus? Yeah, well, we're really lucky that we can actually just take our surplus to the fruit and vegetable shop that I collect the pig waste from, and they'll swap it for anything we want. So yeah, it works really well. From what I see and hear, I'm scared about the possible glut of zucchini in the coming summer. From Shannon. How many plants have you got, Shannon? They're just the most giving plant. If you don't have much space, everyone should be growing zucchinis, courgettes, I think. If you don't have much space, 1 plant is enough. If there's only 2 of you in the household or 1 of you in the household, I think 1 plant is enough. But they're definitely a plant everyone needs to have, because it's just a really, really giving plant. It's so abundant and productive. It's you know, I couldn't think of a vegetable garden in the summer without having one. I was thinking maybe 3 to 6, still weighing up my options though. Yeah, I mean, Shannon, if I'm in your position, I probably sow 6 seeds and encourage you to plant 3 plants if you have enough space that you're not going to then not be able to plant something else. So if you are struggling for space, just do the 1 plant, Shannon. But if you've got all the space in the world, put 3 in, because I think that, yeah, this is your first real season of doing a lot of the stuff. And I think in your first season, you can have a lot of courgettes, and that's going to be fine. I make a lot of chutney from courgettes, and I absolutely love it. Just a simple courgette chutney with a bit of chili in, and it's just delicious. And I have that. It's one of my favorite meals, especially this time of year. I talk quite often about having those fresh tomatoes, some goat's cheese and crackers. But I also, if I've got it, which I always do, have some courgette chutney with it and a bit of salad, and it's just a delight. It's an absolute delight to eat. So you can, you know, with 3 plants, you'll be able to make lots and lots of chutney that will last you through the year. And yeah, go for it. Go for it. You won't regret it, I don't think. Liam insisted that Hannah Starrett planted 4 plants. How are we doing here? And there are only us in the household. Yeah, 4. You're going to have plenty. And Vicky Parnaby, we have 5 courgette plants, 3 in the polytunnel that are huge. Wow, I've never grown them in the polytunnel. We've only ever grown them outside. Shannon says, I watch your zucchini chutney video. I thought it was a good idea, but I spoke to my partner and father and they thought it sounded disgusting. Well, the proof is in the pudding. And I think you're either a chutney person or you're not, but I think you become a chutney person over time. I never used to like chutneys as a child, but over time, I like them more and more now. But it can be an acquired taste. But I think, so I've said this before, I quite often talk about eating seasonally. And one of the things we have to do is we have to, if we're new to the idea of self-sufficiency and growing our own food, etc., etc., sometimes we need to open up our palates a little bit, because we live in a society, in a community where the whole world is structured around creating fatty, sweet abundance everywhere we go. You cannot drive anywhere without seeing adverts for a McDonald's hamburger or, you know, whatever it might be. And these foods are just rammed with fats and sugars. And our palates have become accustomed to this. And even the food that we buy in the supermarket and eat at home, you know, a lot of that, if it's been processed, it's going to have fats and sugars and salts to such a high degree. And we almost need to train our palates to enjoy things that aren't that. But once you've done it, it's just a joy. I'm able to, and I mean this, and I genuinely do this quite often. If we eat out and it's a good restaurant, like, you know, you go some places and you look at the menu and you know that it's a good restaurant, they're going to have a good chef. If that's the case, I will literally say, you know, I'll have whatever the chef wants to cook me. And because I can do that, because I know there's nothing going to come on that plate that if it's cooked right, I'm not going to enjoy. So being able to open up your palate to new things, and it can be done. And I can't remember which, there's a professional chef, it might have been Heston Blumenthal that first introduced me to this idea. But if there's things you don't like, every time they're on your plate, just have a little bit. Rather than leaving it all entirely, just have a little bit of it. And I think he said, and I can't remember, I'm paraphrasing, but basically after sort of separate attempts, 8 separate attempts, anything you don't like will become palatable to you. It might never become your favorite thing, but it'll become something that if it's on a plate, you're not sort of put off by. And you do need to put that little bit of work in at the start to, like I say, open up our palates. And this is, you know, several Michelin-starred professional chefs saying this. So there's a couple of things that I am never going to love. I'm not a big fan of licorice, for example. But again, there's nothing which, if it comes on a plate, I'm not going to enjoy. And in terms of savory food and, you know, eating out, there's just nothing I can't think that I love. Right, a few more videos. Jeff and Deb love chutneys and relishes. Yeah, I do, but I never used to. But yeah, I definitely do now. And Shannon says, I'm open to it. I had my first Cape gooseberry the other day. Nice. And Julie from Elegant Sufficiency, agree, RE, retraining away from processed food flavors, even learning to cut sugar out from coffee. Yeah, cutting it, just reducing sugars and salt. It is stunning how much salt they put in, you know, restaurant food, and the food that if you buy microwave meals and you just have a look, think about if you'd made that food yourself and how much salt you may or may not put on it, and then have a look at how much is in there. And have a little think about what a gram of salt weighs. You might be really, really surprised. And I think, at least in the UK, the labeling on packaging means that you can actually work out how much salt is in there, because it'll give you a percentage of your recommended daily allowance. With a little bit of work, you can actually convert that and work out how many grams of salt is in there. Then if you take a really good set of scales, measure out that much salt, you'll be stunned. You'll be absolutely stunned. Hannah Starrett says, I followed this advice. I'm sure it was Heston Blumenthal. I finally overcome my aversion to onions in the last month. Great. It's fantastic. And it's, you know, it's something that I'm really glad that I've, you know, become accustomed to. Even cultivated veg have been bred to be tastier. Bananas are more sugary. Modern sprouts are less bitter. That's Vicky Parnaby. Yeah, no doubt. And you know, that's really easy to see if you are into foraging as well, because we forage the ancestors of a lot of these plants. You know, the ancestors of carrots, we forage wild carrots. The ancestors of beetroot, we forage as well. And, you know, you can definitely see the lineage and you can see what things have been bred for. But, you know, that's natural and it's, you know, obvious, it's clear. We can see how and why that's happened. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with any of these things. But I think what we do need to do as individuals is take responsibility for having the knowledge of all these things. Because with knowledge is power. And I really do mean that and agree with it. Because with the knowledge of these things, we have the power to make informed decisions. The best decisions you ever make are when you make them with 100% of the information. And, you know, it's no different with our food. Hugh Furley Whittingstall's new book, Eat, Bet Forever, is a really good read on this topic. I'm sure Eat Better Forever, maybe. And Jeff and Deb Shipton agree that it's a good book. Yeah, Eat Better Forever. So, yeah, I will be honest, I don't have any of Hugh Furley Whittingstall's books, but I have quite a long reading list to get through, but I may or may not add that one to the bottom of it. I get suggested books all the time, and there's just not enough time in the day for me to get through them. I've got a massive bookshelf. All right, Sprocket's trying to get himself comfortable by shifting the furniture around. I've got a pretty hefty bookshelf of books, all in this sort of genre. And come on, and I don't plan on adding any more to it for a little while. I've got plenty to get through. Anyway, I think I've gone through my little list of stuff that I wanted to talk about. So I'm going to wrap this video up in about 5 minutes. I've got one last point to make, but if you've got any questions for me that you want to get in, now's the time, because I'm aware there's a bit of a lag, and usually I ask that right at the end, and then I see a question or two come up just after I've hung up. But yeah, so the last couple of things I want to say. Firstly, if you haven't already, please make sure you press that like button. Do it, right now while we're in the feed. That'd be awesome. And also make sure, if you are not already, that you are subscribed to my channel, because in the past I had at least one person who thought they were subscribed because my feed showed up in their feed, but apparently they weren't. So make sure you are subscribed as well. Last thing is to say I've got a foraging walk tomorrow, and when the people arrive, it's from the house. We are going for a walk here, and then we're coming back here to eat some of the stuff that we've foraged. And depending on whether, what sort of people we have and what they're into and what they're, happy with, we might film as much of it as we can. Shannon said, Carl, I posted on Facebook, but what should I try and grow in my polytunnel rather than the boring tomato-cucumber combination? Something fun that you think I should experiment with. Do you like chilies? Chilies are a great option. Cucamelons are a great option. Now, cucamelons aren't something I recommend to someone whose focus is on yield, whose focus is on feeding their family, but for someone who wants something fun and something to experiment with, then cucamelons is a great choice. They're basically, they look like melons, they look like watermelons, they're the size of a grape, a big grape, and they taste like cucumber. They're brilliant in salads because they just look so fancy. You just chop them in half, put them on top of your salad, and they look great. Not massive yields, but they will grow really, really well in your climate. And my wife writes Inca berries. And I think another name for that is going to be ground cherries. We have some here that my wife overwintered. I'm so impressed because I told her that it was, I didn't tell her. I said I thought she was going to struggle because she overwintered them outside in a polytunnel, I think. And, we get frosts in our polytunnel, but she did amazingly, and they've come back this year. So, yeah, so impressed with her doing that. But, yeah, Inca berries is a great choice. What am I hoping to forage for tomorrow, says Julie. What would be a good seasonal win for your day? Any mushrooms at this time of year. So we're kind of just approaching the start of peak mushroom season. It's always mushroom season. There's always edible mushrooms. But right about now, we're kind of right at the top, right at the start of our mushroom season. So I'm not expecting to find anything exciting. But if we do find some puffballs, which are around, some blushes maybe, some tail end of dryad saddle. I don't think we're going to find any of that, but yeah, any kind of nice edible mushrooms. We could well find some really common stuff, some turkey tail mushrooms, things like that, but anything slightly less common will be an absolute win. Other than that, what I'm expecting us to find lots of salad type plants, lots of things we can make teas from, and we'll be doing both of those. And then we're almost certainly going to be harvesting some hogweed shoots, which is what will be the sort of centerpiece of what we'll eat, I imagine. So, Mongol Raider, whereabouts in the country are you? We're in the southwest of the UK. We're in Somerset, but we're sort of near the Dorset border. We are South Somerset. So, yeah, that's where we are. And I think that's going to wrap us up. So thank you ever so much, everyone, for joining me today. I appreciate it. Spread the word, tell all your friends, and I will definitely. I was just gonna. So my wife's having a conversation in the chat, and elegant sufficiency Julie has just has just said that, Jackie, don't worry, you've got a strong fan base here. She absolutely does, as everyone else is agreeing. We all knew that. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up. Thanks ever so much, guys, and I'll speak to you all really soon. Thank you for joining me. Real pleasure, as always, to do this today, and I'll speak to you soon. Cheers.